We want to thank you for being here, and
thank you very much. Good morning, guys. How is everybody today?
Doing good, thank you.
That's not good enough. How is everybody today? All right. All right, good. So my name is Chris Griffin. I'm the general manager and co-owner of LaRocca Inspections Incorporated. We're basically a family of 4 different inspection companies. LaRocca Inspections is the general physical inspection. That's the one you guys are probably most familiar with. They're the guys that come through the house and kind of look at everything overall in general. We also have a company called Chimney Check Professionals. Can anybody guess what they inspect? Chimneys, that's right. Okay, the difference between a general physical inspector inspecting your chimney and an actual chimney specialist is the general physical inspector is only required to do what's called a level 1 chimney inspection. A level 1 chimney inspection consists of basically a cursory glance. Yeah, that's a fireplace and it's attached to the chimney. Okay, good. Essentially that's it. A little more detailed, but not much. A level 2 chimney inspection requires a video camera, and it requires somebody trained in being able to dismantle certain components of the fireplace and chimney structure so they can get a better idea of what's going on with the system. Also, FIRE requires, actually, their law, if you will, requires a level 2 chimney inspection upon the transfer or sale of real estate. Didn't know that, did you? Now, granted, it's not a law. This is a guideline, much like many different things are guidelines. They're not necessarily rules. But because there is a dominating body out there who says this should be done, it's always a good idea to do that. Our third company is Mold Check Professionals. They're a mold and moisture inspection company. Okay? We're going to get into a little bit of that later. And then our fourth company is Sewer Line Check Professionals, and they inspect sewer lines, main sewer lines. This is a very, very important part of the inspection process, because I will tell you this. How many in here have experienced that, a clog in their, the showers backing up, bathtubs backing up? Right. That clog you only found out about when the shower started backing up. Okay, and then, it's time to call Roto-Rooter or whoever, right? You can avoid that. That can be prevented by having an actual camera sent down into the sewer lines to determine their condition and what's going on inside of them. There's a lot of common conditions occurring in sewer lines that can be maintained that aren't costly to repair. If these conditions are left on their own device for a very long extended period of time, they can be quite costly to repair. All right? Anybody would like to take a guess as to how much approximately it would cost to replace a main sewer line from the front of, let's say, a house on an average sized piece of property out to the city connection under the street? And do you all know that in the state of California, the homeowner is responsible for the sewer line all the way from their home to the connection of the city sewer underneath that street, not to curb face, to the center of that street? Anybody? To have it replaced. Average cost. Anyone?
10,000?
10,000?
6.
15,000. Did you say 2,500? 5,000? Okay. 15 is the starting point. All right? Yeah, 15 would be kind of on that lower end. When you have to start digging the street, 8, 12 feet down into the street to connect to that city sewer, you could quickly be in the range of $23,000 to $25,000. Wow. Okay, for a main sewer line. Now, for the cost of a $295 inspection to find out what's happening there, that's a pretty good investment. All right? So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about risk management, okay? Because that really is what the inspection process is all about. It really is trying to limit liabilities, okay? You as agents obviously want to limit your liability to that home or that piece of property that you're buying or selling for your client, right? You don't want to be married to that, right? You don't want them to have a problem that wasn't found out about during the contingency period. You don't want to get that phone call, okay? Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You're not going to have many guys standing in front of you telling you this secret. Put the liability on your home inspector. Give it to him. It's his job, or her. It's their job to carry that liability, okay? because they're the ones who are experts in what they're looking at, who know how to do a home inspection, take the liability off of you. If you have a client, let's say you're buying something, you have a client who says, I don't want a home inspection. I don't want a home inspection. I'm good with my hands, I can fix everything up. What are you going to do? Are you going to say, okay, shrug your shoulders and move on? You might, but you're going to have them sign a waiver. Why are you having them sign a waiver? It releases the liability. So, if they say, yes, I want a home inspection, you would never talk them out of it, right? It's kind of the same thing in reverse. Releasing your liability. Very, very important, okay? As the general physical inspector, okay, is basically there to go over the 5 major systems of the structure, okay? We have the roof, we have the foundation, we have the plumbing, we have the heating and air conditioning, and we have the electrical systems. Now you as agents, you're required to do what's called an AVID, Agent Visual Inspection Disclosure, okay? The general physical inspection is very similar to an AVID in that it's visual, okay? They don't dismantle components. But does your AVID include testing air conditioners and heaters, crawling underneath the house in the crawl space, getting up into the attic? It doesn't include that. Your AVID basically is walking about, looking for stains in the ceiling. You know, you're looking for stains in the ceilings. You may grab a door or two, check some windows, things like that, right? Looking at the carpet, you know, a lot of cosmetics things you probably know, cracked window panes, things like that. Well, the general physical inspector, he's going to do the same thing. He's going to note those items, but he's also going to get more in depth into those 5 major systems. He's going to determine whether we have a plumbing system that's made of copper or galvanized for your water lines. If so, whatever material it is, he's going to determine what its condition is, you know, approximately how long he thinks that will last or what it's currently doing right now. Do we have leaks? Are we showing rust? Is it time to repipe? All right, things like that. And he's going to get into areas where he can make these decisions that you guys aren't getting into, attics and crawl spaces. If you ever have the desire to go into a crawl space, I would highly suggest it. Put on a crawl suit, grab a flashlight, dust mask, and go ahead and go under. You will learn so much about that structure, all right? You don't even have to know what you're looking at, and you would learn a lot, all right? We just kind of get an idea of how it's built and where the pipes run and the electrical components and the foundation itself, so forth and so on. The heating and air, they're going to test it. They're going to go to that thermostat. They're going to turn it on. They're going to cycle it through. They actually have a tool that they're going to go to the registers. Okay, these are called registers. And they're going to shoot that tool. It's an infrared tool. And it's going to tell them what temperature is coming out of that register. And there is a certain temperature differential that they're looking for. Okay, if we've got 85 degrees of hot air going into the unit, and we have 80 degrees of cool air coming out, that system's not functioning properly. It needs to be serviced. But they'll be able to tell that to the degree. Okay, we're looking for a good 25-degree differential there, both in heating and cooling. The electrical systems, they're going to actually go up. You guys, when you walk through with your client, you're walking through the laundry room, and you see this little gray box on the wall, right? Oh, look, and you open the little door and you see the breakers, or possibly fuses, whatever. Oh, good, well, there's your fuse panel or your breaker panel. Okay, most likely a sub panel if it's in a laundry room or in a room somewhere other than outside. And that's all you know about that. That's all you know. There's a sub panel there. The inspector is going to take off what's called the dead front panel. There's 4 screws on that. He's going to remove that panel, and he's actually going to look inside at the components. Okay? Hopefully you guys are going to invite us back out again, and I'm going to do a PowerPoint, and I'm going to show you what we find inside. Okay? It's really neat. There is no, you flip the light switches, everything's fine, lights are working, the whole bit. You open this panel, and oftentimes we will find dangerous items in there. Burnt wires, melted components, crossed wires, breakers that are way too small for the circuit that they're running. Okay, 1926 era home, and they've got glass fuses, and now they've just installed, they rebuilt their kitchen, and they've got this, you know, beautiful electric ovens, these huge stainless steel refrigerators, built-in microwaves, and they've got all these components running to 130 amp fuse, and that panel was only manufactured to allow 15 amp fuses. What does that do? Electricity, when it generates, what does it create other than electricity? Heat. Right, heat. Okay, so if you've now overamped that panel, you've put a fuse in that is twice the size that's supposed to be there, that when at 15 amps, if it's loaded, it'll pop and shut power off. Well, now it won't pop, it won't shut power off. And now you're going to melt the panel, and that could potentially be a fire. Now, I'm not standing up here to scare you, but what I am doing is telling you that these are the things that we see when we come in. And these are the things that we know is important for your client because it's an easy fix. It's a simple $1,500 upgrade to a newer panel. That's all it is. You have to add more circuits, add some breakers, and then you put the wires where they go. It's a pretty simple fix, right? So knowing that, obviously, at the front end of the deal is very important, as opposed to paying for that at the back end of the deal, because we didn't find out. Okay? Does anybody have any questions or y'all understand where I'm going so far? All right, good. So that's some of the stuff we find on electrical. Okay, we go into a little bit more in depth, right? Talked about plumbing already. Foundation. There's a big one. A lot of people have a lot of questions about foundations. Okay? If you're purchasing a brand new home, what we're going to be looking for in that foundation is a particular bolting pattern that would meet today's standards. Okay? Earthquake bracing that would meet today's standards. A drainage system that would meet today's standards. Okay? And all code approved and everything else. That's what we're looking for in a brand new home. What are we looking for in a 1920s era home? We're looking for safety issues. That's it. What do we think as inspectors, as trained professionals, what are safe? What is safe? If we go underneath a home, 1920s, and it is a non-bolted structure, in other words, it doesn't have bolts into the concrete foundation holding the home onto that foundation, and it has what we call cripple walls. Does everybody know what a cripple wall is?
No.
There you go. Have you heard of retrofitting?
Yeah.
Okay, shear panel? Shear panel? Okay. Cripple wall, let's say this is our foundation. This is just concrete. Now there's 12 inches up or more of that's underneath the dirt. And as we're crawling through the crawl space, we're crawling on top of the dirt, and this is the part of the foundation that we actually see. Okay? Now many homes today without a cripple wall, they would just have a wood plate called a sill plate installed right there. And then they would have their floor joists on top of that. And then there's your floor upstairs. Y'all get that?
Yes.
Okay. A cripple wall is much of the same construction except these are tall. They're very tall. Very common in like a step-down foundation. Let's say we had a hillside home, right? And then these would all come up to the level of the interior floor. Now when those are that tall, what happens when that house shakes? It's like a tree swaying in the wind. Exactly. It's like a tree swaying in the wind. So shear paneling or retrofitting, a cripple wall type construction, would be to take plywood panels and connect these in a series. And then those are screwed in on a particular pattern. So now what have we done? We've brought that shear strength to it. Now those can't rock back and forth. Now they're one solid component. This is all one piece of wood through here. It's all connecting everything. See that? So that's what they mean when you hear about shear paneling or retrofitting. Also, retrofitting would be, let's say again, in a newer type construction, we're going to find bolts, okay, with nuts on them right there, holding, and then that's inside the concrete. There's like a J-hook that goes down into the concrete when it's wet. And they set those bolts into that concrete, then they drill the holes in the sill plate, and they lay that sill plate over the bolt ends, and then they put washers on it and they bolt it down, okay? Well, in a 1920s era, up to about 1926, even later, we'll find structures that don't have bolts. So we may recommend retrofitting, thank you, of the actual bolting pattern. Retrofitting of a foundation of bolting is what they do is they have these steel plates that they basically attach to the wood, and then they bolt it to the foundation that way. Instead of going vertically, they're coming horizontally at it. All right, so it does the same thing. This is retrofitting. Now, does every home need to be retrofitted?
No.
Thank you. No. Exactly. You don't want a home inspector that comes out of the crawl space on a 1920 era home and say, oh my God, this thing is going to slide down the hill. Unless, of course, you can actually see it sliding down the hill. Then you could probably make that statement too without even crawling underneath it. But you just don't. Because this, these homes, keep in mind, when they were built, we're assuming, obviously, they were built to code. They were built to the standards that were in place at the time of construction. All right? There is no need, there is no law that it must be upgraded. The only time that any sort of need or law comes into play is if you decide to do significant remodeling or addition to the home. Then the city can and will come in and say, okay, well, you must upgrade, this portion or certain portions, or you must do this. Like, you could obviously never add a second story to a single-story home without doing some significant upgrades to the foundation underneath. You're adding all of that weight. You have to create, caissons and supports underneath them. Okay? But there is no need to upgrade just for upgrade's sake, or to retrofit just for retrofit's sake. All right? Now, our inspector or an inspector may come out and say, well, we recommend upgrading or retrofitting because we are seeing some shifting. Maybe some of the cripple walls have settled and they're leaned over a little bit. And you can tell that inside. When you guys are walking through, let's say you're listening, and you're walking through, and I'm going to use this. This is a little dramatic. Like you're walking down this floor that's like sloping, like your little ski ramp, okay? Guaranteed something's going on in that foundation. Guaranteed. And that's where it all starts. Now, does that mean there's something very bad? Maybe not. Maybe it's a matter that we've had a roof downspout draining off in the left rear corner of the home for the past 80 years, and it softened the soil, and we've just got some typical settlement. All right? Fine. This adds character. This adds character. Fine. Let's get the water away from that corner. Let's, strengthen up with some retrofitting in the foundation, and let's put some shear panel on the cripple walls. But we're not going to lift the house and level off the floors. Forget about it. It doesn't need to be done, typically in most cases. I've been in the inspection industry for about 15 years. I've actually found two homes in my thousands upon thousands of inspections. Two homes that actually could not be repaired, that were literally level them out. The foundations were in that bad of shape. All right? Both of those homes, I took the liberty, and we don't recommend this to home inspectors, but basically I pulled up to the house and I got with my client and agent. The first thing I said was, before I get into, testing your doorknobs and your windows, I want to have a quick look at this foundation first. Because when I pulled up, it was in Silver Lake in the hills. When I pulled up, I could tell the house was sliding down the hill. You could see it shifting off its foundation. So I knew that it had significant foundation issues. So of course, I immediately started in the foundation. I went down there, took some pictures, and I brought them back up. And we ended the inspection right there. The agent was very happy because obviously he's not going to want to try to sell a home or purchase a home with their clients that then turns into a lawsuit later because nobody told him, look, really the foundation is done. It needs to be, there's an old rock foundation too. You can't retrofit those. You can't, like the river rock that's put together with mortar, you just can't retrofit it. Okay? All right, so we are talking about risk management. My God, Chris, you're a genius. How do you know that, Chris? I haven't gone to the city yet. I can verify it by going to the city. But how do I know that I think it might have been installed without permits?
Final floor.
Okay, the kind of floor that's on the walking surface being slick. All right, number one. Number two, if the city inspectors looked at this, they would have said, whoa, you need a rail. They would have said, hold on, you need a floor that's not slippery. It's pretty simple. So that would lead me to tell my client, well, this is okay. I just want to bring it up to you that this may be, considered a safety issue, and you're going to want to get an expert in here to kind of make this a little safer for you if you want to take the house the way it is. We're not suggesting that, oh, no. You can't take this. Don't buy this. We're just saying that if you do, keep in mind, you want to make sure that nobody's tripping here, and you want to protect against that as best as you can. The way to fix this is actually a pretty simple fix. One rail goes here, the rail goes from there to there, and then grip tape, like you put on your skateboards. You put them on your skateboards. Yeah, like skateboards. Just to grip it up a little bit. Okay? Pretty simple fix. But this is what the city would have required had they come in, seen it, and it was designed and permitted and so forth and so on. Now, that leads me to something else. Because something's not permitted, how many of you have dealt with the non-permitted issue? Right? Oh, that might not be permitted. That's not permitted. Oh no, not permitted. Okay? I say BS. Permits, obviously, are needed and required by law. But that does not mean that something can't be installed properly without permits. It does not mean that a professional did not do the job just because a permit wasn't pulled. Okay? It is a clue, though, sometimes, often, that maybe someone less than the appropriate professional did the job because they didn't know how or didn't want to pull the permit. All right? So I would suggest, anytime you are having work done on your own home, on a client's home, or share this information with your clients, that if they are looking at getting some electrical work done, some plumbing work, some heating and air, roof, whatever, don't hire the handyman to do it, no matter how good he is. Okay? Because a handyman, basically, is very good at a lot of things. He is an expert at none. That's the bottom line. He's very good at a lot of things. He can install a few outlets here and there. He can fix a light switch. He can change out a bulb. You know, he may be able to put some laminate floor down. But he's not an expert at any of those things, oftentimes. So you want the expert to handle the items that would potentially be problematic, especially items that can be safety issues, electrical components. Right? I don't even mess with those. I get my electrician in to fix that. Okay? So on your Avid, you're walking through. Observe things. Observe. You would observe this. Again, stay away from like recommending what the fix is. The other thing I observe is those glass panes. About like what to look for yourselves so that you can relay that to a client who's either selling or buying. Okay, let's say you're selling a house. You're listing a house, right? One of the most important things you can do is have a home inspection prior to the listing, pre-listing. Why? Why is that? Why should I have my client selling the house provide a home inspection? Because the buyer is going to provide a home inspection. Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because that way you know what you're getting into. You've got a homeowner who's very proud of their home that they've lived in for 35, 40 years. And their husband has taken care of everything meticulously. Okay? You're going to need to find out what those issues are that they don't know about. And that way you know about them up front. They're not a surprise when the buyer's inspector comes through, and it creates an upset with the seller because he or she or both have so much pride in their home that they cannot believe, you know, that their waste pipes are eroded and leaking underneath their house. They can't believe it. I've taken care of this home for 30 years, and that's impossible. Your home inspector is wrong. But if you had the home inspection done, it would be known about up front, and it would be a disclosure issue. Disclose, 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 disclose. You guys never heard that, right? It's first time? That is one of the most important things. Disclose it, disclose it, disclose it. I will tell you this. In my company, it's not the home inspection that kills the deal. It's not. It's the items that are found that the buyer does not want to take care of, that the buyer doesn't want to deal with. That's typically what kills the deal. Okay? But if you know about those items first, and you disclose the second you have a buyer on, well, the waste pipes are old and some of them have leaks. What we're going to do is we're going to fix the leaks, but we're leaving it up to you to let you know that your waste pipe's actually going to need to be replaced here very shortly. There, it's been disclosed. Done. Now you're bringing in buyers who are willing, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, I can see that, yeah. It's going to cost me about $6,000? Absolutely. Okay, fine, I'll take the house as is, fix the leaks, and yeah, I'll go ahead and get the waste pipes replaced in the next couple of years. You're done. It's already up there, it's up front. You actually can be more picky, essentially, about the buyer. This guy says he'll take it with that disclosure. This guy says walks away. Good, you know. That's what you want. That's what you want. On your walkthroughs, on your next home inspection, follow your home inspector around. Follow your home inspector around, as much as he doesn't want you to. Just follow him around. Tell him I said so. Even if it's not one of my guys, tell him I said so. Yeah, just follow him around. There is a plethora of information from a home inspector. Obviously, you have to let him do his job, and you can't, you know, but just kind of look at what he does. Look at the things that he looks at. You're going to scratch your head and go, wow, I would have never known that. I would have never known to look there. I would have never known that about that item. All right, when you walk through a garage, I'm going to use an example of yours. When you walk through a garage and you've got a water heater there, right? How high is the water heater supposed to be off the garage floor?
18 feet. 18.
18? 24? 18? Anyone else? Not sure? What do I think? The actual flame of the water heater is actually where they measure it to. Is required to be 18 inches off the ground, off the floor. Okay, that's a requirement. Do you all know why? It's definitely safety, yes. Very good. Correct. Basically because fumes, gasoline fumes, right? You've got your lawnmower in there, you've got a gas can or something like that. Fumes rise to 6 inches. Like if you had a gas spill, those fumes are going to come up 6 inches. So we want that flame 3 times higher than where those fumes are going to be. So there's that sort of 2x safety parameter. Okay? Now granted, if you went in there and just, you know, sealed everything up and started pouring gasoline in there, obviously the higher the gasoline, but well, whatever. But it's 18 inches, and that's the reason, because of the fumes. How high fumes can rise, we want to keep them away from that flame. Because garage fires are typically one of the #1 reasons for home fires. Now, as you're walking through the garage and you see this water heater laying on the floor, you may want to make a mention of it, so you can let your seller know that's something that's going to get pointed out in the home inspection that is going to need to be taken care of. There's not a lot of people who are going to accept a safety issue like that without it being taken care of. Okay? Sometimes there are, sometimes there's not. You got a plumber buying the house, sure, he might just go, I can do that pretty easily. Okay? Let's pretend this is a garage wall. And behind that, let's say that's the door that leads into the bedroom. Is that okay? Everybody got that? We got a garage and we've got the door that leads into the bedroom. Ding, 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 ding! Exactly, it was kind of a trick question. That's not allowed. Cannot have a bedroom attached to a garage or a parking area or anything that's used as a bedroom. It's not allowed. Okay, that can be an office, all right? It can be something else, but it can't be a bedroom. Okay. Now let's say we have a garage wall with that door that leads into the laundry room. That's kind of common. You know, laundry room, then we go into like a service room, and then we're in our kitchen, right? Yeah, that's totally okay. But what does that door have to do? Correct. It has to be a self-closing door. It has to be able to close all the way and actually latch. So it has a spring closure on it, whether the kind that you see up top, like on a screen door, or it's actually built into the hinges. It has to open, and then as you walk away, it has to close automatically and latch. Why is that? Because that way the door, there's measures being taken that you're not breaching that firewall, which is what I'm going to get into. Okay, let's say we have a back wall of a garage right here. Okay, behind this wall is your living spaces. Your living room, your kitchen, your dining area, your bedroom, so forth and so on. Let's say there's no door here, okay? But let's say we have, you all seen this, right? You've got a platform here, and you've got the water heater sitting on the platform, and next to it you've got a forced air heater, right? The vent pipes come up, and they go out this way, and then they head out of the roof, and so forth and so on. You all seen that? Yeah. Lots of garages in Southern California have that sort of, right, platform with a water heater and a heater on top of it. Okay, well, coming off, let's say this this water heater, let's say we have pipes coming off and then there's a big hole in the garage wall there where the pipe goes through. Let's say we've got a duct coming over here, you know, traveling across the garage, and then it goes into a big hole that they cut to get it through that garage wall, okay? You cannot have holes in the garage wall. Can't have it. Anything making a transition or passing through, because this wall is called a firewall, anything passing through has to have fire retardant sealant around it, and it has to be a get that? It has to be fire retardant material. Okay? So you can't have a plastic pipe going through a garage wall, because if a fire occurred in the garage and caught that plastic pipe on fire, it would transfer right through the wall. It would just follow the pipe. So the transition piece going through that wall has to be metal, and it has to be fire caulked around it so that there's no gaps. This wall is required to be what we call a 20-minute fire wall, fire safety wall. So a fire in the garage can start, and the tenants or the occupants have 20 minutes before that fire starts coming through the wall. If there's a hole in that wall, they have less than 5. It's just going to literally go straight into the wall, get into the insulation and into the framing. The second it gets into the framing, guess what it does? How does fire travel? You guys ever watched fire? It travels up, right? You start a fire in the center of this wooden board here. The fire's going to go up, okay? It'll kind of hang out a little bit here, and once it really gets going, it'll start moving down, but it's going to go up and then across. So you get a fire in a wall, it's going to go up. It goes up into the attic. What's the attic? A big open space with a whole bunch of oxygen and wood. And then it literally spreads across the house. Why do you think firemen, when they first pull up to a house, they get on the roof and start punching holes in it? They're they're ventilating the attic, okay? They're ventilating the attic so they can get that fire moving upwards, out of the roof, so it's not crossing the house anymore. Who thought this was going to be a class about fire? Anyway, that's why you don't want to see any breaches in the garage walls. So as you're walking through, if you see that, make a mention of it. Make a mention of those water heaters sitting on the ground. Make a mention of that panel, that electrical panel that you found in the laundry room that has glass fuses. Okay? Not because it's necessarily dangerous, but because most likely that's going to be something that your client's going to need to upgrade very soon. They're just outdated. They're antiquated. You know, they don't provide enough power. They can be potentially dangerous because they are old. Okay? Most likely, if you have glass fuses, you're going to find cloth-covered wire. Now, cloth-covered wire in itself is not necessarily a problem. Okay? It's still insulated. The city, there's no building department that I know of in the state of California that says, okay, you have to take the cloth-covered wiring out. All right? Now, when you're talking about cloth-covering knob and tube wiring, you all heard of knob and tube? Knob and tube wiring basically is exposed cloth-covered wiring. It's not inside any sort of metallic sheathing, you know, that covers it. Normally, your wiring would go inside what we call conduit. Conduit is a metal tube. Okay, it's like a metal pipe that the wire is inside the metal pipe. So it can be in the attic and it can't get nicked, it can't get damaged, it can't do anything. It's protected by a metal pipe. Knob and tube wiring is 2 separate wires running side by side that are exposed. And as they go through wood framing members like rafters or anything like that, they drill a hole through the framing member and they put a ceramic tube through that hole in the wood and then they slide the wire through it. Okay? Now, knob and tube wiring is dangerous for the fact that most people try to attach into it, right, with newer style wiring, and you can't do it. You can't make an attachment to knob and tube legally or safely because it doesn't work inside a junction box and so forth and so on. So basically that's what we see as the most significant safety issue in a knob and tube system. Somebody wanted to install a new microwave in the 1920s era home in the kitchen, They didn't have enough power, or there wasn't an outlet there. They got into the attic, they tapped into the knob and tube in the attic. They got their outlet in, and it works, but they created a fire hazard up in the attic. What is happening? Okay, good. Okay? All right, so that's that. Mold inspections and physical inspections. I'm going to tell you guys something. Please do not ever rely on your general physical inspector to tell your client if they have mold. 2 reasons I suggest you do not rely on that. 1, legally, the general physical inspector could be standing 3 feet away from mold, be looking at it. Legally, he does not have to say anything about it. It's unfortunate, but legally he does not. Okay? Now find a home inspector that would at least say, oh, that might be mold. Okay? But legally he doesn't. Number 2, most general physical inspectors are not qualified to tell you if it is mold. Okay? They are qualified to say, well, you know, that looks like a mold-like substance. Some sort of growth is occurring there that should definitely be checked into. All right? So those are the main 2 reasons. Also keep in mind that a mold and moisture inspector is trained to go to the areas where they commonly find mold or moisture issues. Okay? Physical inspector, not only does he not have the tooling required, he doesn't have the training required. All right? We're going to play a little game. I've got some gift cards here for you. Now wait a second. Let me qualify that statement. These gift cards do not benefit you. They benefit your next client. Because these are gift cards for $25 off our inspection. Okay? So the game we're going to play is who can make that thing quiet. The game we're going to play is mold and moisture. There are 3 key ingredients to having mold. And they are kind of, there's really no order of them, but there is one particular one. If you don't have it, you can't have mold. All right? So we're going to play a little game by the show of hands because I do actually have to hand out cards. So get ready. I'm looking for 1. Anybody? Humidity. Moisture. More correct than humidity. Okay. Well, I have to go with the first moisture. There's a gift card for you. Give that to your client for one of our inspections. Thank you. Moisture. It is the number 1. Okay, absolutely number 1. Should have gotten 2 gift cards for that. Without moisture, you can't have mold. Period. Period. Think of everything you've ever seen mold on. Okay? Where's mold in? Piece of fruit? Yes. Moisture. Right? What about the wall? What about the wall that's dry? Well, wait a minute. Huh. How can I have mold on a wall that's dry and there's no moisture? Because there was moisture there in the past. And that mold grew, and those mold spores right now are probably dead, and they're all dried, and you can wipe them off like this, right, with a sponge. And then they get sucked up into your air conditioning, and they get redeposited over into the bathroom. And what's in the bathroom? Moisture. And then they start creating new spores. So if you see mold on a wall, don't just wipe it off. Let it go. You don't want to do that. Create new. You can. There's many, many different household molds that you can take care of with bleach. But oftentimes that's still when the mold is alive. It's still damp, so it doesn't get airborne. It doesn't just like dust. Okay, if you do have that, and if that moisture issue has been taken care of, what I would recommend first is like a damp towel and cover that. Cover it and then wipe it away so that you're not creating dust. You're actually creating dampness again real quick. And then take a blow dryer and just, make sure that it's all dry before you do that. So moisture is the number 1 cause for mold. Now, would it stand to reason then when a mold inspector comes through the home, okay, is he going to look for mold? No. He's going to look for moisture. Okay? Because mold spores can start to grow 24 to 48 hours after there is moisture found. Okay? So we may not be able to see mold yet, but we got a wet wall. Okay? Now that may mean, let's say there's a leaking pipe inside this wall, right? Let's say the outside of the wall's damp. What do you bet if we open that wall and it's been wet in there for a few days, that on the inside of that wall we're going to see mold? Not on the outside yet. It hasn't eaten through, okay?
Do you check for moisture? Because you know how you paint over everything and then it's hard to detect.
Sure.
Do you check for, I know there is a thing you can check or something.
Mold and moisture inspectors use infrared cameras and moisture meters. Okay, so they can take an infrared camera and do a quick glance around the room and find the cold spots or the blue spots. And then they'll hone in on those blue spots with their moisture meter. Oftentimes a blue spot or a cold spot is not necessarily moisture, it's just a cooler area of the wall. Maybe we have an air conditioning duct running inside the wall and the air conditioner's on. So that infrared camera is going to get that cold.
The general inspector won't typically do that.
No. General inspector
Good
typically
paint
doesn't
job
have the
covers
tools.
a lot of.
Correct. So what we're often looking for, actually a very, very good point, okay? I don't want to get cynical and I don't want to get too suspicious of people, obviously, okay? But your ears need to perk up a little bit. Your antennas need to go up a little bit when you walk into a house that's been freshly painted. Like an older home that's been freshly painted, okay? Not that we're assuming there's a problem, okay? But you have to look a little further beyond that paint. You have to ask questions. Well, why were everything freshly painted? Oh, I was just getting ready the house for sale. Oh, good. Okay, great. Disclose. Okay. Oh, well, because there were stains on the ceiling, so I decided to paint over them. Oh, well, thank you very much. We'll have that looked at. You'd be amazed that, just by asking a simple question. Obviously there's many homes that they paint the inside and prepare them for a sale, okay? And that's the answer to that question that you want to hear. Well, I just felt like we could move the home faster if it were painted. Great. But if, they say something about staining from an old leak, you need to perk up. Your antennas need to be up. Okay. I need documentation that that leak's been taken care of, any damage occurred, any sort of, so forth and so on. Again, it's about limiting liabilities. When that home inspector gets there, say, listen, it was disclosed that there was a leak, and apparently it was in the attic and it was fixed. Could you pay special attention to that area, please, and let us know about it? And if you get a home inspector who says, no, I won't do that, ask him to please leave. Okay? Bring up any special item that you or your client are particularly interested in or concerned about. Your home inspector should absolutely say, yes, I'll take care of that. All right, so moisture, number one. Yes?
About 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Good. Number two. Got another gift card. Number two, oxygen over here. Looking for one of two. One of two. Think about where you see mold. Got moisture. Low light conditions, exactly. Mold cannot survive. Mold cannot survive in sunlight, in UV rays. It can't survive there. It has to be low light conditions, all right? And the number three, again, going back to where do I see mold? Where's the most common place you guys see mold?
Bathroom.
In the bathrooms? Okay. What about inside your
Washrooms.
washrooms? What about inside your refrigerator? How about cheese? Let's think with cheese. Let's think with bananas, foods. What does mold do? Mold is a living thing. It's a living organism, and it needs what?
Food.
Food. Who said food? All right. Oh, look, here's a mold check card too. That's right. Food. Mold needs food. It needs to eat. Okay, in order for it to stay alive. All right, Chris, you're so smart. Then why do I have mold on this painted wall? I don't see any food there. At least none that I would like. What's on this wall? Y'all know what drywall is? Drywall is gypsum, chalk, encased in paper. What's paper? Came from? Tree. Food. Right, but it's on the paint. How could that be? Take a look at the ingredients of that paint. You're going to find natural materials. in that paint. Rubber is a natural material. It actually has food in it for mold to grow on. How is it that in the washroom I see, most of the mold is always on that caulking right up against the wall where the wall meets the bathtub or the shower? How's that possible? That's rubber caulking or whatever that is. Look at the tube of caulking. It will have natural ingredients in it. Okay, and that's typically what we call a household mold or mildew. Those are the type of molds that you often will just clean with bleach. Okay? So we recommend, obviously, mold prohibitive or inhibitive type of caulks and paints and things like that. All right? So those are the 3 key ingredients to mold. If you walk into a house, REO, vacant, bank-owned, very common, and you walk in and it smells musty, it is. Don't just go, oh, well, let's open windows and get rid of the smell. Okay? Yeah, that'll do it, because the house will breathe. But when it's closed up and you open it and it smells musty, that's because it is. Something is occurring. You're going to want to have that looked at. Okay? The other thing before I close real quick, I know that oftentimes as agents, you try to get the best possible deal you can for your client in the home inspection, right? And you want the least amount of money spent, so forth and so on. I'm going to say something here that may be completely foreign to you. Don't worry about that. The home inspection industry, the home inspections, if you look across the board, generally speaking, they're all about the same price, okay? Some offer different types of services. Some offer better reports than others. Some offer color pictures in their reports or written in a narrative fashion, so forth and so on, okay? But the cost difference between a $325 home inspection and a $295 home inspection, is not that great to start pitching those pennies. Find the inspectors that you have pretty much as your lucky charms. You find that they know how to communicate with your clients. They don't scare people away. They're trained in their communication skills, okay? They can deliver the most atrocious news to a client, and the client will go, I still like this house. Okay, it's very, very important, all right? Because I can tell you about a foundation that needs to be replaced, okay? With everything can be fixed, with the idea of moving the transaction forward, not the idea of, okay, this is not for you, you need to go away. You need to run from this house. You just don't want that, all right? All right, listen, I think that's all the time we have. Yes, Jason?
Do you have any cards left?
Yeah, I've got one on the floor.
Maybe the question with how many spores fit on the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, in closing.
In closing.
Last part of it. Thank you so much. I forgot about that one. Last part of our mold game. This is a $25 gift card for Mold Check Professionals. $25 off your next mold inspection for your client. Anybody care to take a guess? We talked about, those mold spores on the wall that you see. Okay, let's say we've got a big patch of mold right here that you see. Anybody care to take a guess approximately how many mold spores can fit on the head of a pin? Not a pen, but a pin. How many mold spores can fit on the head of a pin? A lot is correct. A lot is correct. It does not get you the card. I need an actual number.
2 million.
1,000. A million.
10,000.
Ah, big winner over here. Approximately 1 million. Approximately 1 million spores of mold can fit on the head of a pin. By the time you see it on a wall, how many spores of mold do you think you might have? Billions. Billions and billions and billions. And that really kind of demonstrates that you could potentially have a mold problem and you wouldn't even be able to see it. And that's why you need, those people with that trained experience and that tooling to be able to bring it to your attention. And I have never yet, even in the biggest, absolute, most atrocious mold problem we've ever uncovered or discovered, I've never seen one that could not be fixed. I've never seen one that was not able to be taken care of. Okay? We have our own referrals for you guys too, so we make sure that your client is treated appropriately and properly even after the inspection. One of my jobs as general manager, if there is ever a complaint, I expect a phone call. I require it.
How much for more inspection?
What's that?
How much more inspection?
How much is a mold inspection? The whole house mold inspection up to about 2,500 square feet starts at $295. Now those are without samples, all right? We, as a mold inspection company, do not sell samples over the phone when you book that inspection. The reason being is just everything I talked about. If you don't find the moisture, you don't have mold. Why am I selling you samples? Find the moisture, and then if you find mold, maybe samples will be recommended, but not all the time and not often.
Sample what? Sample?
Samples of the mold. It's, in other words, if we think that it's what we call a stocky botrytis, is black mold. Everybody heard of black mold?
Yeah.
No such thing. No such thing. Media hype term, black mold. It was produced by the media back in the 80s to scare people. Black mold is what we consider essentially stocky botrytis, which is a toxic type of mold. Okay, it's a type of mold that can do some damage. So sampling would be where my inspector would take a swab sample of that, like on a Q-tip type swab, put it in a little vial and send it off to a lab. That lab would determine the spore count, the level of stocky botrytis, like its toxicity, if you will, okay? And then based on that, we can then come up with what we call a remediation protocol. We can then come up with how does this need to be taken care of, okay? And then we have like 10 different remediators all the way from the small little wall section all the way to like an entire piece of property. All right, listen guys, I want to thank you very much for having me here today. I would love to come back and give you more education. We've got PowerPoints for this kind of stuff and the whole bit. So, you know, thanks again for having us, and please do invite us back. All right.
We want to thank you
To the world. Okay, they manufacture spun fiberglass insulation. Dow Corning is the one that actually started the asbestos scare. Okay, because Dow Corning wanted the market for their new fiberglass insulation as opposed to asbestos insulation. Now think about that. Have you ever seen fiberglass? Okay, what's the scare with asbestos? It's that it's got shards in it that could potentially log in your throat or down in your lung and potentially create cancer. That's the scare with asbestos. Guess what? It's the same exact thing with with spun fiberglass. Spun fiberglass insulation. It's the same exact thing. You would not want to go up into an attic rolling out fiberglass insulation without some sort of respirator. You don't want to breathe that. Those glass shards can get stuck too. So Dow Corning basically put the asbestos business out of business. All right. We as inspectors, the general physical inspector, again, it's outside the scope of the inspection to determine if the material contains asbestos. But we are trained in order to look at something and say that may be a material that contains asbestos. You should have that further examined. Do not believe any heating and air contractor that would come in and say that you have to replace all of these boots, okay, these registers. There's transition, you know, the flex duct for your air conditioning? Okay, well then they go into those registers, but on the back of those registers, on the top of that, there's an actual metal sort of boot that makes the transition from a round duct to that square register. So those flexible ducts are attached to those boots. Now oftentimes in older homes, when heating and air contractors come through and they replace the old asbestos ducting, what they'll do is they will encapsulate the asbestos. They put a coating on that boot, kind of like paint it, so that they seal the asbestos. As long as it's encapsulated, it doesn't matter if it's asbestos. It's totally okay. It's a good insulating material. But so it's encapsulated. Then they put the new duct on it and they tighten that down. Leave it alone. Okay? That doesn't matter. It's when you have asbestos ducting that's falling apart. Okay? Or you even have, there were ducts, rigid ducts made with asbestos materials on the inside. Okay? These, yes. Obviously, if we spot those, we're recommending that they be removed and replaced, because that's in your air conditioning system. You just don't want that. Also, you know, realistically, if you do some research on asbestos, obviously it's a very unfortunate thing that happens if you know, something like that does occur. But it's very, very, very rare. And there is not one recorded case, okay, of ever a problem being in a home. This is more for like the industrial workers and the actual people who worked in asbestos manufacturing factories. Okay, so asbestos essentially is outside our scope. but we're always on the look for it, and we will tell you if we see items that we think may contain asbestos. Asbestos can be in a lot of places. That popcorn ceiling may contain asbestos. The vent material that looks like concrete coming off of the water heater may contain asbestos. Linoleum floors in the 1920s to 30 era's home may contain asbestos. That siding that you see on the outside that looks like fake wood of an older home probably contains asbestos. I mean, it's everywhere. You know, it's everywhere. And even when you start remodeling older homes, you may find other items that are, you know, invisible, or not invisible, but they're enclosed inside a wall or something that may contain asbestos. Does that answer your question, or shall I continue it?
It's generally not a problem in a home, usually, as far as danger.
Yeah, as long as it's encapsulated, okay, and it's not friable. In other words, it's not, it can't get airborne. Obviously, if we go up into an attic and we see these older asbestos-wrapped ducts, and let's say some rodents have got into it and they're torn up, or let's say people have been crawling, like workmen, plumbers, electricians, whatever, heating and air contractors, crawling through the attic and doing damage to the asbestos ducting or the insulation, that's a different story. You know, but if it looks like it's in good condition, encapsulated, that's what we'd report on. You know, if it was friable, we would definitely, you know, sort of give a little bit more importance to this may contain asbestos, and we highly recommend it be further examined because there are areas that are friable, something like that. But no, there's been no recorded case inside a home of anything occurring from a homeowner or a resident of a home. All right. Any other questions?
How much do you charge for single-family residence?
Single-family residence up to 2,700 square feet is $325. That's for your general physical inspection. Okay. Your average cost of a sewer line inspection is $295. That comes with a DVD, an actual movie, a narrated movie of the sewer line, and a written report. The the average inspection cost for your typical mold inspection is $295 without samples. And your average cost for a chimney inspection, one fireplace, one chimney, is $275. We are increasing prices to $295. So get in while you can. And then, of course, multiple stories or multiple chimneys add to those costs. Any other questions? Did you have a question? Oh, no, you raised your hand.
So, $295 for chimney?
Yeah, $295. Correct. These are above and beyond your physical, your home inspection. Last bit of piece of advice. If you have a piece of property, you need a physical inspection, period. Okay? If that piece of property has plumbing in it, you need a main sewer line inspection, period. I'll come here one day and give you a presentation on just sewer line inspection, okay? You'll be amazed at what we find, what we see. That's very, very important. You have a chimney or a fireplace, very, very good idea to have that inspected by a chimney expert, okay? If you smell dampness, or it's an older home, or your physical inspector is a little leery of some moisture, potential moisture issues, definitely get that mold inspection. If your client, okay, shares with you a concern that they have a breathing disorder, or they have a small child, okay, or they're going to be moving their mother in, something like that, because mold really is a personal issue. It affects people differently, but really who it can really affect quite adversely are young infants and the elderly. People that already don't have the immune systems, are not either built quite as strong or are weakening, you know, up here. So that's just a general good idea. Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.